Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Things They Don't Explain about Guild Wars Reforged. In today's episode, we are talking about a very, very important topic, which is attributes and skills. We will very briefly touch quests, and I will, at the end, give you probably the most important tip that you can have playing this game. Might be obvious, might be not, doesn't matter. As always, we have timestamps in the timeline, so you can skip to whatever things you deem necessary. You can go straight away to that final tip. Do it however you like to do it. Now, let's begin very quickly with attributes themselves. First of all, what are they? How many do you get? And all that stuff. Attributes are the primary way for you to increase your character's power, right? They increase the effectiveness of skills, they increase the effectiveness of weapons, and sometimes they do a bunch of other things. The base premise of attributes is that each profession has one primary attribute and a bunch of secondaries, right? On Ranger, for example, my primary is expertise, and my secondaries are beast mastery, wilderness survival, and marksmanship. Normally, you cannot get access to your secondary profession's primary attribute, right? So, for example, as a ranger, I cannot gain access to strength because that's a warrior's primary attribute. You see it here in my list of attributes. I have axe, hammer, swords, tactics, but not strength, right? Strength is warrior's primary. Likewise, if I go, monk, I cannot get access to divine favor. But there is an item, or rather an upgrade for each weapon type, which increases your or rather sets your attribute of a different profession to 5, right? For example, here I have a bow. You see at the very bottom there, it says Strength 5. If your rank is lower, no effect in PvP. This is a recent addition. That's the only way for you to get access to that attribute if you're not a warrior. And yeah, just do with it what you will. It's pretty cool in Buildcraft. You may have seen my Oppenheimer build that uses that specific upgrade. But anyway, back to the original topic, we don't have access to the primaries. We have access to all the secondaries. We can do whatever we want with them. We can equip our entire skill bar can consist of skills of a different profession. That doesn't matter. And normally with attributes, you have certain limits, right, that you can reach or break. One important note I will say is that if you do not have any points in a specific attribute, for example, axe mastery, right? I have 0 in axe mastery. I can still use skills from axe mastery if I have an axe, right? In this case, it requires an axe. So having no attributes doesn't prevent you from using skills. That's important. Now, at level 20, you should have, I will show you right now, you should have 200 attribute points exactly, right? There can be a situation where you have less, even at level 20. Specifically, you can have 170 instead. Why does that happen? There are 2 quests in each campaign that give you 15 attribute points each. Don't ask why, I don't know, but that exists, and if you don't know about it, or if you just skipped through certain quests, you might miss it. So my advice to you is, if you are level 20, if you reach level 20, and you see that you have less than 200, go on the wiki. To get to that page, you just type attribute quest, and you should get to this point, to this page. Scroll down, and you'll see which quests you need to do, right? You only get access to the quests in the campaign where your character originates from. So a Nightfall campaign character must do these 2, factions these 2, and prophecies these 2. Now, once that's out of the way, you have 200 points. You have a couple of limits to be wary of. Limit number 1 is that by normal means, meaning, investing points into a certain attribute, you can only scale it up to 12 at most. That limit can be broken. And actually, with 200 points, just to show you, you can normally max out 2 lines, and then you'll have like 3 points left. There are very many builds that use, something like this, 10, 10, 11, or 9, 9, 9, something, something. It is up to you. Having a couple of unused points is not that big of a deal, right? Like I've seen builds that have 5 or 7 unused points. Sometimes that's necessary. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that while you can reach 12 by normal means, and with secondary profession attributes, that's probably going to be your limit because you cannot equip gear of that secondary profession. With your primary profession, you actually can. Specifically, you can already see I have blue numbers here, expertise and marksmanship. Marksmanship is +4 because I have a headgear piece that gives me marksmanship +1, and I also attached a rune onto it, which gives me marksmanship +3. That's why I get +4 inherently from just gear, and if I max it out to 12, I actually get to 16 in total. That is pretty cool. That means that you can go beyond what the game normally offers you, albeit at some cost, as you'll see later in the runes. But there's a couple more ways to break through limits. Specifically, there are some skills that boost you up. For example, look at this Expert's Dexterity. Let me quickly toggle these so you can... Yeah. You attack 33% faster, and you gain +2 to your marksmanship attribute, which means that if I activate this, I'll actually be at 18 marksmanship. But that's not the end. I can also get one more on this bow that gives me marksmanship +1, 20% chance when using skills. So every 5th skill, specifically skill that I use from my skill panel, will give me +1 for that specific skill, right? There is a hard cap of 20. I'm saying that because there might be ways that you can reach 20 and plus. But 20 is the maximum that gives you benefit. You can only exceed that by using this +1 trigger. So every 5th time you can maybe get 21, and that will actually take it into consideration when doing the math for like damage or whatever it is, right? But normally 20 is the hard cap that doesn't get exceeded or doesn't get better than that. Anyway, there are, as I said, multiple skills that can give you some perks and benefits and whatever, so you're free to play with that and see how that works. And that mostly, actually, oh no, that doesn't wrap up the attributes just yet. Quick note about primaries and secondaries. Usually only primary attributes give you some inherent benefit, right? Again, my expertise, for example, reduces the energy cost of my attacks, touch spells, all ranger skills and all that stuff, right? Cool, pretty cool. The other ones, the secondary attributes, normally do not have any inherent benefit. Like this wilderness survival, for example, doesn't do anything. It only increases the effectiveness of wilderness survival skills, right? There are, however, some exceptions. Specifically, every attribute that scales your weapon mastery, in this case, marksmanship for bows, right? Or warriors can do hammer mastery, dervishes do scythe mastery, stuff like that. Those increase your damage with those weapons, and they increase the critical chance of your attacks with those weapons, right? So those are really, really important to scale up as much as you can if that's your primary way of doing damage. There are a couple of unique ones. Specifically, Beast Mastery is pretty unique because it directly increases your pet's stats, right? You can read up on it. It gives you some crit chance, gives you some stats, whatever. That's an exception. Another exception is Necromancer's Death Magic that increases the amount of minions that you can control at once without them decaying like super rapidly, right? So the more death magic you have, the more minions you can have, and overall it's pretty cool. Again, that's an exception rather than an actual rule, okay? But check out your stats, attributes, and see what they do. Now, we move on to skills. And when it comes to skills, there are a few really, really important things to know. Specifically, there are two terms that are somewhat interchangeable, but not really. Specifically, there's a term unlock a skill, and you can find it, for example, in this Great Temple of Balthazar. I'm here just vibing. You can find it in any PvP area. There's this guy who can offer you to unlock skills. And unlocking means it unlocks them for your character. Oh, sorry, for your account, not for your character. For example, let me quickly use a little item to show you. I do not have, like, you see those grayed out items? Those are the ones I have unlocked for my account. The green ones are the ones I don't. So look at this. It is a wilderness survival skill. I'll open my wilderness survival. You see I don't have this nature's renewal. I'll unlock it. It will not appear in here, but it will show me that, look, I unlocked a new skill. What happens? Like, what the hell is this? The idea is that either using this guy in the Great Temple of Balthazar, or by just, learning skills as you play through the game, you unlock them for your account, which means that any PvP character you create will have access to these skills. So all of these, like, grayed out unlocks if I make a PvP character, they will have all of them, right? Which is pretty cool. It basically is a way for the game to reward you for playing it and, get you into PvP faster and stuff like that. It also will let you learn skills using an extra method. I will mention it later. But again, unlocking does not mean that your character learns it, right? And learning is the second term, is when actually your character learns skills. So, now that that's out of the way, unlock versus learn, how can we actually acquire skills? Let's go through that. The first way I'll explain is sort of a meta one. Again, if you unlock a skill, or if your other character somewhere learns a skill, you can play a ritualist with a spear, right? Or a ritualist with a bow as a ranger, right? And your ritualist can unlock some skills and learn them. My ranger will not have them unless I learn them myself. So you can do that by sometimes using tomes, right? Tomes, like these ones, allow you to learn on this character specifically any skill that you have unlocked for your account. I hope that makes sense. So I used to main warrior back in the day, so I have pretty much all of the normal skills. So I can use this tome to learn, let's say, this watch yourself shout for my ranger, and now I have actually access to it here, right? That's pretty cool. That's one way. The way you get tomes is by, sometimes they drop from enemies, especially on hard mode. You can also do daily quests, and that's a reward for silver tokens, or you can just buy them from players. They cost the same as just buying a skill, really. Now, that's like one big use, I would say, for unlocking things and transferring that kind of knowledge from character to character. The main, I guess, way for you to unlock skills is by actually talking to a skill trainer. As you may have seen, they're present in pretty much every major city. They offer you a selection of skills for your class, for your profession, for that campaign. Some skills are kind of like a core set that are available in multiple campaigns, but most of the time, you have a set of skills for specific to Nightfall, a set of skills specific to factions, blah, blah, blah. And the more into the campaign you go, the further you progress, the more skills they usually offer, so it is worthwhile, checking on them. By the way, take a look at this. Nature's Renewal, the one that I just unlocked in the Great Temple of Balthazar, is buyable for me. So right now I can buy it. I didn't have to unlock it in the Great Temple. I could have just bought it here, and that would have unlocked it for me immediately. Or like this Pestilence, I guess. Actually, apparently I do have a Pestilence, so whatever, I guess. So that's your main way of getting skills. Another way, if you're playing Nightfall, is this guy called Hero Skills. This guy supposedly teaches your heroes how to use skills. But, first of all, anything you pick here will be available to all of your heroes, and it will be unlocked on your account permanently. And it will also be unlocked and learnt by your character specifically. For example, let me take a look at, for example, again, warrior skills. Look, there's Axe Mastery. I don't have this skill, Critical Chop. If I buy it here, boom, I suddenly get access to it, right? So this is a pretty, not cheesy way necessarily, but it is a cheap way to learn skills. So the first thing I usually do is I go to this guy and, pick all the skills for my profession if I don't have any. Also, this guy can teach you Sun Spear skills, which is a sort of faction reward kind of thing. It is funny because your heroes cannot actually use such skills, but you can. But you can only learn it from a hero trainer. So, anyway, that's two methods. Method number 3. Oh, actually, that's 3 methods, right? We have tomes, we have skill trainer, hero trainer. We also have some skills available to us through quests. Quest, for example, this quest of mine I have offers me Weakness Trap, right? And Weakness Trap is a skill. It doesn't say so here, but it is a skill. Especially early prophecies, and I think not only early, actually, most of prophecies offers you a lot of quests that offer skills as rewards, which is pretty fun. Next, we also have sometimes, very rarely, sometimes you get to talk to a specific NPC. Like if you achieve a bunch of faction rewards, or like if you progress in some achievement for a while, you can talk to an NPC and get like 1 or 2 unique spells for that title track. One other way, and probably the most fun way, I think, in the game is how to get spells, is the Signet of Capture method. You buy them typically from a normal skills trainer like this, except it's available usually somewhere mid-campaign, so after the newbie zone, right? In Nightfall, for example, it's like around here. In Prophecies, it's whenever you get access to actually proper skills and proper armor and all that stuff. But anyway, you buy that skill. It is usually in the no attribute segment over here. You slot that into your skill bar like this, and now you can walk out of the town, go and find, a boss that has a profession that you share. For example, if I find a ranger boss or a warrior boss, I can kill that boss and then activate the signet next to its corpse, and that will let me select any skill that boss has access to. Any skill. That includes elite skills. Elite skills are rare, very powerful. They often determine the build, not determine, they often define a build. Not always, but often. And the only two ways to get elite skills is one, by using Signet of Capture, as I just explained. You pick it up, kill a boss, use it there, boom, got the skill. And the other one is tomes, but not normal tomes. You need elite tomes. It works the same way, you can unlock skills from Priest of Balthazar, or if your other character has captured a skill using Signet of Capture, you can then buy an elite tome, either from a different player or using, these daily quest rewards, and they will let you actually pick a spell that you have unlocked on your account. So that's that, and I believe that actually wraps up the acquisition part of the skills. So, to recap, we have skill trainers, hero trainers, quests, tomes, and Signet of Capture. And sometimes some just NPC talk, but that's rare. Now, with all that said and out of the way, let's actually talk about skills themselves. I will really quickly equip some of the stuff that I wanted to showcase. Unfortunately, I had it equipped and then I showed you the attributes and changed the profession, then everything got unequipped. My bad, I should have done better. But let's just do something like this. And let's get out. I've already mentioned briefly in the video about game mechanics that there are different resources that you possess. Namely, you have energy, the blue dot right at the top of the toolbar. You have adrenaline, this fist. You have blood sacrifice that gives you a percentage that you sacrifice to cast a spell. Again, the red dot at the top. And you have this mechanic, which I didn't mention before, or at least I forgot to, the gray dot. That one means Overcast. What does it mean? If I tell my acolyte Sasuke to cast the spell, you see that here at the bottom, there's a little gray bar in his energy, on his energy bar, right? There's a little gray kind of limit. Basically what happens is it's similar to the condition of Deep Wound, where for the punishment for casting this spell is this like Overcast that drains, or gets removed, I should say, a lot slower than your normal energy regeneration. So it kind of locks you out of your max mana for a while. And you can literally run out of mana. You can overcast yourself to 0, and then you'll have to wait for a long, long time. But it is a pretty important mechanic because sometimes it activates special abilities. For example, this Acolyte guy has this spell, access to the spell, right? Swirling Aura. It does something, and then it says, if Overcast, also enchants party members in earshot. That's pretty cool. So, Overcast is an important mechanic. I would not recommend overdoing it, but you can do it a little bit. Now, let me show you a little bit of that adrenaline work that I mentioned previously, but didn't actually showcase. In essence, adrenaline is gained whenever you get hit, or when you hit with an attack. So if you hit once, you see this flame rises by 1. If you hit multiple times, you can have AoE attacks or something like that. You get multiple strikes of adrenaline. Now, I have all of them activated, which means I have enough adrenaline to activate any of these things. Let me activate Sever Atri. You see, it used all of the adrenaline of this one, but it gained 1 adrenaline immediately. And these skills, for a moment, dropped down to, having no adrenaline. For example, You see this Sun and Moon Slash drop down, but then got activated again. That's because when you're activating an adrenaline skill, it uses all adrenaline of that skill and 1 adrenaline of other adrenaline skills equipped on your bar. So, because I hit with that skill, I actually got my adrenaline back. But if this guy blocked me and I used an adrenaline skill, then all of my other adrenaline skills would also be kind of reduced, right? Now, one more thing about adrenaline is that it runs out over time. So if you don't attack for like 10 something seconds or don't get hit, you will lose all adrenaline. So just keep that in mind. You normally it's a bit rough to upkeep adrenaline between fights. Right, now, skills. A few important things I want to mention. There are, typically, skills follow the same pattern of, the tooltip description, right? First is the definition of what kind of skill it is. In this case, you see it's a sword attack. In this case, it's a bow attack. This is a ward spell, stuff like that. It gives you a type. It is important because types sometimes interact with skills. Warriors or mesmers have interrupts that only affect spells, for example. Other things affect all skills. Other things interact with like shouts, enchantments, all sorts of things, right? So pay attention to that. Then you have enchantments and hexes. Those are, I've mentioned them before a little bit. Those are buffs and debuffs with purple arrows and yellow arrows. They are unique buffs or debuffs that can be applied to enemies or yourself, and basically you cannot stack them. You cannot have multiple copies of the same, but you can have multiple different ones active at the same time. There are different attacks, different spells, different whatever things, rituals, spirits, all different like class-specific mechanics. The key takeaway is that some things only interact with certain types of skills, and it is up to you to read that and notice that, okay? And that brings me to kind of, actually, just before I go there, 2 important types of skills are stances. You see this is an elite stance. And weapon spells. Weapon spells can only be, rephrase, a character, any given character, can only be under an effect of 1 weapon spell at a time. Similarly, any character can be under an effect of only 1 stance at a time. And if you, apply multiple stances in a row, only the latest cast will be actually active. If you apply multiple weapon spells in a row, again, every consecutive one will override the previous one, and only the latest one will be in effect. I don't believe there are any other types like this. You can probably check the comments. People will correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure those are the only 2. Now, this brings me to one more topic, which is range. Range is not described in this game like it is described normally, with units and stuff. This is very narrative. So you see there is adjacent radius, this like small circle. There is nearby, which is a slightly larger circle, and then there's in the area. There is also a 4th one, which is the zone of, the earshot zone. And that you can see on your minimap. You see this white circle? This white circle is your aggro range. And also, that is your earshot. Usually a lot of shout skills affect things in the earshot. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because it's a pretty important mechanic for you to be able to interact with enemies, actually. Because, again, this is your aggro range. Most of the spells have a cast radius of just above that earshot. So from here, I could cast a spell on this guy in the area, right? If I had a spell. But as soon as I cast it, as soon as I finish casting it, they will aggro on me, right? But it still gives you like 1 free cast, essentially, which is convenient. It is important to know, spear, for example, is a half-range weapon, so you should be throwing spears from about here. Bows are random. Each bow has a different range. For example, this flat bow has a very, very long range, as you can see. A short bow would be much closer, but the important takeaway is that here you can grab a bow on any character, like a longbow specifically, or a flat bow if you want, and then you can use that to lure enemies towards you, and that's pretty cool. From far away, you can shoot, lure them in, and then deal with a smaller group. For warriors, actually, it would also give you adrenaline, which is cool. Anyway, the reason I brought the ranges up was because a lot of spells and skills and effects have that in their description, and it is pretty easy to miss. It's hard to notice sometimes how big the actual radius is. Anyway, it brings me to, I think, the last point of today, and it's the most important advice I could give you, and that is, please, 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 read fine print. In this game, the designers decided to narratively tell you things, not use tooltips like, you would see in roguelikes with symbols and, sub tooltips and mechanic explanations. No. Here, everything is in pure text, in letters, and it's up to you to discover that. I will give you a couple examples now. If you already know all of this, feel free to leave, but a couple examples include, first of all, those quests I mentioned earlier that give you attribute points. Nobody tells you this is an important quest. There is no tag, there is no nothing. It just basically at the bottom here says 15 attribute points. Okay. In this case, you see weakness, trap, and lockpick. How do you know what they are? Well, yeah, I don't know. You don't? Look up on the wiki, I guess. But what I'm saying is that you will not, hover over this weakness trap and it won't show you the skill. You will not see an icon. You will not see anything. You'll just see the words, right? So I urge you to read words. Requirements for skills, for example, is another big topic. Most of the time, when you hover over a skill like this, in the gray text down there, it says attribute expertise, and prophecies is where the skill is available from. But sometimes, a lot of the time actually, the gray text also includes some conditions. For example, this trapper's speed. Look, it's a stance. Traps recharge 25% faster, activate 25% faster. In gray text, it says ends if you hit with an attack. This could be easily missed. Easily. Please, again, read stuff like this. Everything is important. Sometimes it's not about the gray text. Sometimes it's about the white text itself. It could show you or describe things like, what things it affects, what is the condition. Usually, I found myself that in white text, they usually show like positive conditions, like if this, then that. And in gray, they usually show negative conditions, something like if not this, then not that, right? Something like that. Anyway, fine text, fine print, that is the name of the game. It is important for everything, little notes like stacking, non-stacking in your gear, little notes on how skills use, like this one is a bow attack, shoot 2 arrows, but only 1 if you're enchanted or hexed. Easy to miss. Easy mistake could be made that you can run this with like elementalists, enchantments or something. So anyway, I think that's all I wanted to tell you. If you have any questions, please post them below. I'll try to answer anything I can. If not, then I'll hopefully see you next time. One last tip, PS, you can sort your skills by different types. Attributes, profession, type, cost, whatever you want. And you can change your display over here. Small note. All right, have a good one. Bye.